All right, so we did it again, in which I completed the entire heroic gauntlet with just Hook on Brutal. And fortunately, we didn't get anything out of it, but legendaries, we got no exotics out of that. Great job, by the way, Crystal Dynamics. Nonetheless, I'm going to show you guys in this video how I did it, because this time it was a different build. I did it again. I did it last week, obviously, but this time with this week's, it was a slightly different build, and I'm going to go through all of that and kind of show you some things that I kind of toyed around with and things that you should take into consideration. So let's go ahead and get into it. So I'm going to pull this up real quick and hold on, because I would maybe do some gameplay with you guys as well. All right. So this is what I worked with. See, Might, Resolve. I would love to get another piece. If I could get an arm piece that could more complement this, then I would have been able to go more like even on melee defense. But right now he's basically a tank kind of DPS hybrid. This is not my main Hulk. The other one is. This is less tanky Hulk for sure. But Might, Resolve, Resilience, yada yada, a little bit of proficiency there. But let's talk about the gear, because that's more important than anything. I just wanted you guys to screenshot that if you guys care for that. So as I've mentioned before, I think the False Pulse Nanites, this is to me the best arm piece that you can, or hand piece that you can get from him, for him, mainly because of the Pim Infuser. And you can see that it does, every single power attack does Pim particle damage. So you have everything from you grabbing an enemy, slamming them together, slamming them on the ground, going from the elbow drop, the Fury thing, ground pound, all of that is doing the Pim damage. And obviously his ground pound is his most effective move. I encourage you to go from the elbow drop instead of doing it from the Fury, because you're in the air, you're not going to get hit as much, and then you drop down. And for those of you guys that complain about stagger with Hulk, which I don't see why, considering that he has Bone Shaker, and this does give me increased damage when I'm in there. Bone Shaker, he's like unstoppable when he goes Bone Shaker. But you can see that I will shrink the enemies, and they go through an animation because they get smaller, and you can juggle them. So the enemies that are around you, once they do end up shrinking, you can see that they can't get attacks off. They can't do any of that. And, the ground pound blocks incoming missiles. So that is why I say he's overpowered, not underpowered. Stop calling him for a buff, or calling a buff for him. So this is the best thing that you can get. And then you have the critical melee attacks, trigger stun damage, explosion, 54, over 50%. This is the best piece that I have for him. I can't even move from this. So that's what we're working with there. As far as, allergies out of control. This is what I worked with, mainly for the plasma damage, of course, and the spin rock. Man, it is such an effective thing. We're going to go through the skills here in a little bit, but it is such an effective thing. I don't necessarily use this to throw anything. I throw every now and then to kind of maybe clear the scene of some enemies, because I have the big meteor deal, and it kind of drags those enemies. But I use it for melee. So you pick it up, do the spin rock. You'll see me do a lot of that, and that's how you get the job done. This one right here, every time, this is what I say, like, you get something, if you're gonna play him as a tank, or especially a DPS, actually, get something that, in terms of your perk, either gets you a buff or something of that nature when you perfect dodge, or when you take damage. When you're doing full tank, go take damage, you could probably get away with the perfect dodge, because you're going to be doing a lot of that. Dodge Gohan, if you're playing a pure DPS. So I do have another one. I think this isn't it. I already put it in the inventory. So you can see that 20% chance taking the damage grants an explosion, and it stuns enemies. I also have one that when I dodge, I think I did actually use it for like the first 2 missions. But when I perfect dodge, perfect evade, what ends up happening is that they end up floating in the air. So I can get attacked from an enemy all the way across the map, and he gets hit with that, and he's floating in the air because of the anti-gravity thing. As far as the heavyweight quake stimulators, what I'm rocking with the heroic gear, it's all about the heavy combos and that damage buff. Rampage and vulnerability is a big thing as well, because you got to pay attention to the buffs. This is what I encourage you guys to do in my last video, and I'm going to do another one to talk about Hulk as well, because a lot of folks just don't know how to play with them. But when you do this, okay, pay attention to your buffs, whether it be invulnerability, damage buffs, whatever the buff is. If you get it, change your play based upon that. Play to the strength of the perk. So you have a damage buff. You know there's a big enemy that's right next to you. Maybe you wasn't fighting him at the time. Go move to him. Chip away at him, right? Get rid of that enemy. Stuff like that. You're invulnerable. Okay, you know that you can do the Fury deal. Just pay attention to that and really use that to your advantage. I'm going to get to some of the important skills here in a little bit. But this is what I was rocking with in terms of they had North Stone of Conquest, mainly because of critical chance of the power attacks. And this is what I dealt with. I don't really worry about heroic rating and ranged. However, you'll see that if you saw my last Reddit post, which I'll show you guys right here. I don't know if I talked about it in my last video. I believe I did. But there was something that I did that really got people, talking, because of how quick, I was able to get rid of these enemies. So let me show you this video, and I'll show you that I did it with this build. It was with this particular build, and how effective it was. Hold on just a second. So it was this deal right here, right? So I went into that, right? This is the elite enemies. We're playing on brutal. It's the elite enemies, right? So they all have shields and whatnot. Elbow drop into the thunderclap. And when I do the thunderclap, I have the one which we're going to go into in a bit. Cloud. That's the important one. So they're constantly taking gamma damage, right? And then one dodge into that. I missed him on purpose, because I don't use my assault heroic simply as an attack. Use it as my get out of jail free card, and also I just want to give additional cloud. So, which we'll go through. I have 2 gamma clouds floating around right now. Okay? And then you'll see I jump up, elbow drop into the ground pound, and you're seeing these guys take an incredible amount of energy, a couple of melee attacks. Again, elbow drop into this right here. And I cleared that whole scene in like 30 seconds. And I had that damage buff and I cleared it in 30 seconds. The elite squad on brutal. And how I did that was, yes, I showed you the perks, the gamma and all of that, but let's talk about the skills that are very important when using Hulk. So I always tell you about, I'm always getting these heroic orbs. I think it's very important to do that. So if you can get the deal, what is it? This one right here, where that's not what am I talking about? It's the mastery. Yes, every takedown you do, you get a heroic orb in the mastery. Get that. So you're always going to have those in the chamber. Definitely if you're going to be trying to solo a gauntlet or something like that. And I double up on that assault heroic. But this is the one that I go with. A lot of people go with, these two, more stun damage, all of that. The reason I go with this one is because that gamma radiate, and if you have a bunch of enemies near you, that can do some crazy damage. So that's why we were doing so much damage when we were doing that ground pound, because they were taking gamma and I was giving them PIM particles while they were doing that. Same thing with the ultimate heroic, using that as doing that gamma damage. So they're constantly taking that. And so we doubled up on it. We had that and that going, and we ended up getting a damage buff. And you can see how virtually overpowered he is when you can get that off on any enemy, especially a big group of enemy. Support heroics, I want to talk about real quick, because I think a lot of people don't understand how when you use Bone Shaker, that's stuff that y'all gripe about. about him being able to take all of that damage, or like he gets staggered. This nullifies that. So if you keep it one in the chamber, you can really do a lot of damage while using this support heroic. Let me turn this up real quick. See if we can just get some live gameplay here. I have another build that I actually worked on right after that. I'll do a future video on this. I also am going to do a video talking about intrinsic abilities for Hulk. And I think a lot of people misuse his rage, like a lot actually. So I'll show you guys how I use it, and you'll see some of it in action here. But I mainly want you to guys, I hate these damn riot bots. Let's get over here so we can do this. So you see that, and then we go from the ground pound, and you see how much damage that does, right, to those enemies, right? Like those over there, they're already out of there for the most part. This is why if you use him as a tank, he's fine. Like a lot of y'all worry about, well, you know, it's that dopamine. It's always the dopamine. People want to be able to deal as much damage to people in the quickest amount of time. So what they do is they complain about playing as a tank because they don't think he does as much damage. Bogus. If you have buffs on him and all, like, you know, using your abilities properly, he can do a lot of damage. But yes, you do focus more on DPS. He can do even more damage, and I think he's overpowered in that regards. But of course, the tank build definitely for team play is about as good as you can. Look, I have a buff. I play to that all the time. Like if I get a buff, I get way aggressive. I go to the biggest enemies. So you're talking about damage buffs, and then you look at the fact that I have this this other stuff going on. I'm gonna get this. Let me show you the bone shaker, right? I don't think I'm gonna be able to get this off in time. But you see, when he has bone shaker, he can take damage without getting staggered. So the stagger issues that you guys gripe about is kind of ridiculous, but considering that he has it built into his heroic to specifically avoid that. But if he couldn't do that, he'd be severely overpowered, as people could just cheese moves, which you kind of can do if you set up your stuff anyway. Dodge, Gohan. Always do takedowns. Always do takedowns. Always do takedowns. Every slam attack, all of that, grab enemies, throw them together, do whatever you got to do. Keep in mind, every single one of those is doing pin particle damage. So we cleared through that fairly easily, but we got 4 stars because I didn't do that in time. Nonetheless, that's just kind of gives you an idea of being effective with Hulk and what it is that you can do if you are being effective with his gear. He's, I'd argue, an overpowered person. Just play to his strength. Stop calling for buffs. Hope this helped you out. If you have any questions, give me a holler. I will say that I did post some tips and tricks using Hulk in the Reddit. It's Play Avengers Reddit. So if you want to check that out, I will actually put a link in the, I guess, pinned comment so you guys can check that out. Did a couple videos helping that entire thread out with Hulk because a lot of you guys are struggling. Hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, y'all be easy.